There we go.
Got him.
And I have books, so it looks like I read stuff. That's
There
good.
you look so smart now. I don't have books. I have a couch.
So
I don't know what that means. Today we're going to be talking about Top Dog. I'm here with Ashley Merryman, New York Times best-selling author of Nurture Shock and Top Dog. If you could give us a little bit of your background and an introduction, that would be awesome.
Well, my friend Poet Bronson and I have been writing on sort of the science of human development and child development since about 2006, 2007. And Top Dog, as you mentioned, is a New York Times bestseller, our second book. And we've also written for Time, New York Magazine, Newsweek, The Guardian, on and on.
Yep, nice. And so today I want to talk about competition. And I think that's just the basis of Top Dog. I think a lot of people know what the term means, but not necessarily how to do it or the kind of the impacts it can have on some people.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the main things that we learned, which I think was perhaps a surprise, I'd never really thought about it before, was that the goal of a contest, the goal of a tournament or a game, sure, it's to win. Mm-hmm. But the benefit of competition is not the win.
Yeah.
Because the win isn't assured. And it's just going to depend on any given day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so the benefit of competition is that you're pushing yourself. It's that improvement in the moment, pushing yourself harder than you had anticipated you could do, anticipated that you knew that the other people required, and also the improvement over time. So it's not just looking at how you did on that one day, right? In basketball, you're not looking just at that one quarter or that one game. You may say, I'm playing in that moment, but in terms of judging how you do, that would be a mistake, right?
Yeah.
It would be stupid to say, well, this one quarter is representative of your whole season. No, you look at the whole season and you see how did you improve throughout? How did you do depending on who you were playing, who was playing? And so that's the kind of focus. It's not about winning. It's about that improvement over time.
Okay. One of the themes in the book that kind of carries throughout is you talk about people that are gain-oriented or prevention-oriented. Can you give us a little preview about what those two things are and the differences?
Sure. Another way to think about it is, which is I think more common sports metaphor, is to talk about playing to win versus playing not to lose.
Yeah.
And everybody sort of thinks, oh, well, playing not to lose, that must be for losers. But that's not true. The number one team, the number one player on a squad may be thinking, wow, I've done really well, and now everyone's just waiting for me to screw up. And at some point, they are going to screw up, right? So at that point, even though they were playing to win to get to the top, when you're at the top and you feel that much pressure, you feel a bullseye, you may switch to playing not to lose. And so gain orientation is about focusing on what you're going to get from a successful experience. And whereas the loss prevention is focused on preventing a catastrophe that you know is going to come. And it turns out, if you think about this in terms, these aren't just metaphors. They change how you go about something. So we all have these orientations in the moment. As I was saying, the guy at the top can switch to preventing mistakes. The closer we get to the end of the game, to a big exam, we think, I've come so far. I just don't want to screw up now.
Yeah.
But there are also people who sort of innately are focused more one way than the other. Yes, it's definitely about the outcome focus versus preventing the mistakes and the obstacles that are in my way.
Can you talk about some of the gender differences and kind of where guys and girls will fall?
Well, I think on average, the research shows that men are more overconfident. They sort of expect that they're better than their opponents. And women on average seem to be underconfident. So they're expecting that their opponents are as good or better than they are. And that changes approaches. It changes willingness to join a team. Guys think, I don't know if I want to join this team because they may not be as good as I am. Women think, I don't know if I want to join that team because they're probably better than me and I don't want to be a drag on the team. I don't want to be the one person who's screwing up. So there are changes in terms of who's willing to join. Another gender difference which seems to be there is that because guys are overconfident, they're more focused on the likelihood of success. Again, they're focused on that gain because they're thinking, well, if I'm the best guy on the team, of course I'm going to win. Whereas the women who aren't as confident, who are thinking, oh, those other people are better, they're more focused on the odds of their success. And they're thinking, ooh, I don't think I can do this, so I'm going to look for a different opportunity, or I'm going to stay home and practice and not even go out for the team until I think I can do really well. So we write in the book about Anson Dorrance and how he realized that you needed to address those differences when he was coaching men's teams versus women's teams. Mm-hmm. So he stressed them out during practice.
Yeah.
Right? But during the games, he already knows, like I was saying, that the girls are worried, I don't want to let my team down. So then he doesn't need to yell at them during the game. You know, his favorite halftime speech for the guys is to yell at them and kick trash cans through the window. For girls, it's, well, what do you think? And that gives the girls the opportunity to say out loud all of the concerns they were having during the game, but they were afraid to tell anyone.
So I've been working with this one coach, and she has very motivated, this is a volleyball coach, very motivated players. They practice really well, but it seems like when they get to a game, the stress and kind of the intensity of the game takes a toll on their nerves, and they don't perform to their highest level. So she was wondering, how can they design a practice that has this competitive fire and creates this intensity and stuff so they can get used to that type of atmosphere, so when they actually play a game, it's not like a shell shock situation where they're like, oh, I'm nervous now, you know?
Right. Well, if it's the whole team sort of, and you can have a team sort of group intensity, you know, an excitement or fear, and those are definitely contagious emotions, absolutely. So if the entire team seems to be having this trouble, you know, again, I would think about, you know, some examples that Anson Dorrance did. For Anson, he ramped up the pressure during practice. Mm-hmm. Everything was a competition. Everybody got ranked in everything that they were practicing. It was a public ranking, and they understood there was no such thing as a starter. Everybody had to fight for being a starter every single practice, and if you didn't do well in practice, you may have lost. So by the time they got to the game, there was sort of less pressure because they felt that they were playing the hardest actually against their own team members. Mm-hmm. You know, it does in some ways depend on the kids. If some kid, you know, you can't inherently turn a practice into a game. It may also about playing more games. Yeah. Finding more informal things that aren't, you know, a tournament, but just some sort of crosstown rivalry practice, but that still the kids care about and feel like it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Especially for kids who are more prone to be hit by stress. Those other kinds of stress will help some, but at some point a game is a game, and you can practice as hard as you want, but really you need that experience to have the actual tournament.
A lot of the stuff that we're learning about practice is related with specificity, making your practice as much like a game as possible. And we've been focusing on designing drills, but I think this is a whole another part, focusing on the emotion that's present in a game, not just the actions. Another question we had was about kind of reframing nerves. And could you talk about that and maybe how we can reframe the notion of the actual game into seeing it as more of a challenge rather than a threat?
You know, my mental image is sort of the challenge and the threat, the emotion. And I used to think before I started writing Top Dog that there was this thing called physiology and there was this thing called psychology. But I think there was some overlap at some point in the brain. It's got to be overlap. But now I'm sort of thinking that they're so intertwined you can't even really distinguish them, especially when you're talking about a moment of competition. And I want you to think about the last time you watched a blowout football game, especially college, where the team that's doing well, they're jumping up and down, the guys are waving, going like this to this bands, and everyone's screaming, and they have more energy after 4 quarters of a game than when they started. Mm-hmm. The guys on the other side of the field with the blowout, they're curled up, they're holding their knees, they're bending over. You can see their whole chest heaving in and out as they can't catch a breath. Well, they played 4 quarters too.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Why is it that the guys who've been running around for 60 minutes on one side of the field have energy to spare and the other ones are about to collapse? And it's the physiology and the psychology. So the researchers are now looking at this thing called the physiology of challenge and threat. And in a challenge state, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be successful or certainly win, but you think you have a shot. You think that you have a meaningful opportunity, a meaningful ability to do this. You have the skills, you have the training, you have the preparation, you're up against similar opponents. In a threat condition, no, you don't. You don't have a chance of winning. Again, it's sort of going back to that prevention orientation of mistakes. It's how bad, how much of a disaster this is going to be. We're not prepared. We're not physically fit enough. We're not mentally skilled enough. These guys are twice as big as we are, whatever it is. But you think, wow, we don't really have a chance. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that these two mindsets have physiological consequences. In a challenge state, the muscles that line every blood vessel in your body cause the veins to dilate. So you're getting more blood circulating through your body. Your heart rate variability changes, which is important because if you're running around on the court and then you stop, right, mm-hmm. your heart has to respond to whether or not you're running or whether you're sitting at the bench or whatever you're doing. So in a threat state, the heart rate variability goes down. You burn through your glucose that's circulating in the bloodstream. That gives you this initial burst of energy, but then you get worn out and you can't come back from it. In a challenge state, so that's a challenge state. Yeah. In a threat state, it's the opposite. Your veins actually dilate. Your heart rate increases, but because your veins are more constricted, your blood pressure goes up. So you actually have, in the challenge state, up to 2 liters of blood more pumping through your heart per minute than in a threat state. Well, you can imagine this is going to have a huge impact, not just on your physiological energy, but your cognitive abilities, right? The ability to concentrate on what's going on is going to be impaired. The evolutionary biology ideas behind this is that in a threat state, you were running away from the tiger. And if a tiger bit you, well, you might lose a hand, but your core vital organs would remain intact. And even the veins, constricting would protect blood loss. Whereas the challenge state would have been that you were actually trying to hunt a deer or fight that tiger back off. And in that case, you actually have increased platelets so that if the tiger did bite you, you could keep on going. So there's real differences. And what's interesting is the researchers right now are saying, well, if the physiology and psychology are connected, if we change the psychology, can we change the physiology? And the researchers are finding you can. By framing something as, this is exciting, you can help yourself change to get to that challenge state. If you think, no, this is stressful, this is anxious, it helps trigger those threat biological mechanisms. And Jeremy Jameson has said in lab studies to Harvard students who were preparing for their graduate record exam, if you feel stressed, that doesn't mean you're doing badly. It could mean you're doing better. And when he got the people who'd heard that scores, they were doing better. They got 50 points higher in the math section of a practice test, 65 points higher in the actual test. But the trick is you have to do that beforehand. It's really hard in a threat state when someone's veins are dilated, when they're burned through their glucose, to say, well, no, this isn't stressful.
This is fun.
Just a challenge. No, it just doesn't work that way. Your body takes 20 minutes to sort of absorb the cortisol elements that have been produced in stress. But the main thing is that it's important to frame these things as exciting challenges before going in and not realizing afterwards if you can change it, because that's much, much harder.
And if you're dealing with a player or a team that is naturally more prevention orientated, what are some tricks to help them frame, okay, we're going into a game, you're naturally prevention orientated, but let's be gain orientated, let's see it as a challenge. Is there any specific keys to focus on to train someone to be something that they're not, I guess?
Well, I think it's hard on a team level. If the team is prevention-oriented as a group, that tells me that the coach is prevention-oriented, and that's where the focus has been. If you're talking about individuals who are more focused on prevention, if the concern is, oh my gosh, I'm not going to win, and that's more of the mindset, then can you shape it? Okay, this is a team that's probably going to kick our butts. But what I want us to do is this, and do more small skill focus and say, did you pass X% more this game than the last game? Okay, then we consider that a success.
Yeah.
So you're focusing on those interim things that are more under your control and also more measurable from one game, one practice, one season to the next. And that, I think, will also help people say, okay, even if it was a blowout, I did better than I would have done in the past.
Yeah.
And that keeps people having that feeling of progress.
Yeah, that seems to be very gain-orientated, right? Like, we might not win, but I'm going to get this. Yeah.
It's really interesting. The research, the buzz, I think, in sports psychology often and just popular psychology is about positive thinking, right? And the research says positive thinking. There's really no support for positive thinking. But what seems to work better is to think, okay, here's what I want to have happen. Here's the best possible outcome. Now, what are the obstacles that are going to stand in my way? Then the process of overcoming those obstacles becomes part and parcel of the success. Mm-hmm. And can we talk about testosterone for just one second?
Let's talk about testosterone.
So, everybody thinks right now, at least the popular understanding of testosterone is that it's about aggression. And, people in sports would talk about roid rage, and then some scientists say, well, there may not be support for roid rage. But all of that comes from a misunderstanding about testosterone. Testosterone is not a hormone of aggression. In fact, in meta-analysis of the actual research, there's no correlation between the two. Testosterone, aggression, no relationship. What testosterone is it's the hormonal equivalent of motivation. And it's pushing you to do whatever you get that gets you status and social approval and encouragement. And because of that, depending on the setting, it's going to manifest itself in different ways. So if perhaps you're a boxer and your coach says, I want you to be aggressive and swing and knock the guy down in the first seconds of the match, testosterone may mean aggression because that's what gives you approval. But research by David Edwards, a researcher at Emory, found that in soccer championship teams that really valued coordination and teamwork on the field, how you communicated from one player to the next, how you passed, or whatever, that the people with high testosterone were the most highly rated for teamwork. My favorite example is the firefighters. Firefighters with high testosterone, those are the guys who run into the building and save not only the woman, her children, but the goldfish and the cat. Right? And no one in their right mind would even have entered the building, and they go back one more time for the fish. But high testosterone paramedics, they're known for being conscientious and meticulous because the doctor in the ER doesn't want to hear, hey, I invented this new procedure and surgery in the ambulance on the way back. The doctor at the ER wants to hear from his paramedics, what happened to the guy? Why is he here? What treatments have been done? What symptoms does he have? So we can move on. So as a coach, you want to focus on what are the things that get your players' approval from you, from the other team members. Is it teamwork? Is it coordination? Is it showboating? Is it a flashy move that's going to get a cheer? Is it attention from the girls or who are cheerleaders or parents? Looking at those, what they have achievement is going to change not even just how they play, and it's absolutely going to do that, but it even changes the physiological response to what seems more exciting and more fulfilling. So we really need to pay attention to what is it we're doing to encourage kids and push kids, because this really does change their behavior on a even biochemical level.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that's like all the questions that I had. Amazing book, amazing work, and I hope I can put this together and get this out to as many people as I can, because it's what I'm finding with everyone I talk to and the more research that I do, pretty much everything that is the norm is wrong. Like there's from eating to working out to motivation to praise to everything. The majority of people go against what the science says, and that's super interesting for me, and I just kind of want to pursue that. And so this is a great example of that. Thanks a lot for this.
Yeah, no problem.